I cannot stress this to you enough. When you have defenses going for 20 points, 18 points, 15 points, and 13 points, that is what's helping you replace bums like Brian Thomas Jr., high round draft picks who haven't come through and probably won't come through for you. That's what's keeping you afloat in fantasy at this point in the season. So that's why I go through the top 12 defense rankings on a weekly basis. And I'm one of the only fantasy YouTubers who covers defense multiple times a week. So make sure to go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now, get into our first tier of defenses. I feel pretty solid, particularly about the top two defenses here, because we know that these defenses are absolutely fantastic. So the way I look at this is the Broncos leapfrog the Seahawks at number 1, and they're taking on the Raiders on Thursday Night Football, which I have said in previous weeks, I don't like defenses on Thursday nights. It's not typically a spot that's done very well this year, but we have had some recent performances on Thursday nights from defenses that make me feel a little bit better about the Thursday night spot. The Ravens last week obviously did great against the Dolphins, and then the week prior, the Chargers did great against the Minnesota Vikings. I think when it's this lopsided of a matchup, it makes me feel better. Now, the only concern I have is that it is a divisional game, and those do get weird. We saw this last week. I mean, these divisional games get weird every single week, but even if it gets a little weird, I don't really see it being a shootout. I think if anything, it's a low-scoring game, and the Broncos defense, regardless of who you've got back there, they're going to get after Geno Smith because their pass rush has been absolutely dominant this year, leading the league with 40 sacks. Now, number 2, again, they got leapfrogged. I've got the Seahawks defense at number 2, and they're taking on the Cardinals at home. Now, the reason they got leapfrogged is because I initially set these rankings last night before Monday Night Football, so watching that go down, I really kind of got to thinking, man, Arizona's offense, they can score points. They've been proven to with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. And I'm not joking when I say this, not being hyperbolic. They've got a legitimate decision to make if they want to just keep rolling with Jacoby Brissett. And it kind of seems like the coaches want to do that. They were discussing the offensive coordinator, how they felt comfortable because Brissett could play under center, which is something the coordinator likes to do. And he can obviously see over the line better. All that to say this. I think Arizona's offense, it's been proven, moves the ball and scores more points better with Brissett at quarterback. They've got weapons. And again, divisional matchups make me a little weary. But this is exactly like the problem that the Broncos defense are giving teams as well. Fast, physical, young, athletic, aggressive. I mean, that's everything you can use to describe the Seahawks defense. They literally snapped Jaden Daniels' arm in half on Sunday Night Football. They're absolutely wrecking offenses. 27 sacks in 8 games, 9 interceptions, 2 special teams touchdowns. This team is so good, and I don't really care about matchup. They'll be in the top 12, along with the Broncos, 95 to 99% of matchups. The Lions' defense is at number 3, and they're going to Washington to take on the Commanders. Now, of course, if Jaden Daniels was a part of this, it would be a lot different. The Lions' defense is not exactly the most trustworthy. Like, they lost to the Minnesota Vikings, but I do want to highlight this. They actually had a decent fantasy day. They ended up getting 5 sacks on the Minnesota Vikings, and they ended up getting an interception as well. So they're still making the fantasy plays necessary. And if you think Washington's going to be any better, you're crazy because they no longer have Jaden. They have an old offensive line. They've got an old team in general. They're going the wrong direction while the Lions are going to come in this game pissed off and ready to go. I don't see Washington putting up more than 14 to 17 points maybe, and there's definitely going to be some mistakes made from that offensive line, not being able to protect Mariota, and just mistakes that Mariota will make himself. So I feel relatively comfortable having the Lions inside the top 3 and in tier 1. Dropping down to our next tier, we've got a weird tier here. I've got the Browns defense at number 4, and they're going to New York to play the Jets. So both teams, they're coming off bye weeks, so neither one of them has the advantage over the other in that sense. Obviously, the Browns defense, I don't think it's been disputed. Very good defense. They've done a very good job, all things considering this year. They're the number 12 defense in fantasy football. Just think about that for a second. This team can't move the ball, they can't score points, and they're still the defense number 12 on the year. 24 sacks, half of those basically are Myles Garrett, but they've got 8 forced fumbles and 6 interceptions as well. That's what changes with Myles Garrett. That guy is so dominant, he causes a complete earthquake around him and affects everything else in the defense and in the offense. So against the Jets, this is already a good matchup because they can't move the ball particularly well either. I don't see how it doesn't work out and the Jets score more than 13 to 14 points. The Texans defense is at number 5, and they're taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars at home this week. So we saw last week that defense is dominant. And I said this on Monday. I said there's 3 elite defenses in the NFL. It's the Broncos defense, the Seahawks defense, and the Texans defense. I mean, they shut down one of the hottest offenses in the NFL, and the Denver Broncos had to pull it out by getting another miracle to happen for them, basically. Now, they did, and that's bad for the Texans record-wise, but that defense is so dominant, man. Against the Denver Broncos offensive line, yes, they only had 1 sack, but they had an interception, and they had a fumble recovery. Translation, that's a physical defense that at any level can make an impact in fantasy football. And Jacksonville, they're going in the wrong direction to me. As of the time of this filming, I literally just saw it pop up that they got Jacoby Myers in a trade. If you think that's moving the needle for them, you just haven't been watching long enough. I think the Texans defense ends up doing well against a divisional opponent at home in Houston this week. And then at number 6 to round out this tier, I've got the Panthers defense taking on the Saints in Carolina this week. Now, there's a couple things that I think are actually at play here, and nobody's really discussing it. So I'm going to discuss the part I think it's being underrated, which is the Panthers are 5-4. Don't look now. That's a 5-4 team, over 500 by week 10. That's really impressive. And this defense has done actually semi-low-key well. Defense number 19 this year. And in previous years, the Panthers wouldn't sniff top 20 defense. They've got 14 sacks through 9 games. That's not the good part. They've got 7 interceptions on the back end because J.C. Horn is developing into one of those lockdown corners as well. So I do think that against the New Orleans offense, this is a team that cannot move the ball. If you thought it was bad with Rattler, it's even worse with Tyler Shough. Like, seriously, it's bad. And they will throw interceptions when they get into a hole. This offense just isn't talented enough to put up many points. So even if the Panthers have a bad day, they're not going to give up more than 20 points to the Saints. And if they do, they're going to get interceptions and turnovers along with the ride. So I do think that the Panthers, I don't see how they're not a top 10 play this week. And like I highlighted at the beginning of the video, defense is more important now than it was in week 1 or week 4. This is the time you need to lock up your fantasy defense, and off of the bye week, teams like the Browns, they're probably on your waiver wire right now. What you need to do, instead of using your priority waiver ad this week on the Browns defense, you need to wait and use our automatic waiver wire tool on fsroundup.com to go grab the Browns defense, because always there's a mad dash to the waiver wire at 3 in the morning after those priority claims run through to go pick up the rest of the remaining free agents. We've automated that process for you so you sleep through the night and still beat the league mates that are going and getting up at 3 a.m. to grab those players. You'll get the Browns defense. You'll piss off your league mates at the same time. It's a win-win. League winning features. That one is my top 250 rankings on a weekly basis, the comparison feature, and the league sync-up feature, all for $6 a month. You need to go do this right now while you still have a chance to win your league, because this is going to put you over the top. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got a pretty big tier here with the Bills at number 7, and they're going to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Now, I've said this over the weeks. The Dolphins have a huge problem whenever they leave their own territory, particularly at this time of the year, because this is when it starts getting colder. So if this game was in Buffalo this time of the year, they would have no chance. The only reason they've got a shot is because it's in Miami. But the way that they look as a team right now as a whole is just terrible. They already know that their coach is not going to make it past, January 1st of 2026. This is not a motivated team. They're already out of the playoff race, basically. And the Bills defense did look very good against a dominant opponent this past week against the Kansas City Chiefs. I still worry about the Bills defense, but that pass rush starting to turn it on with Joey Bosa. It makes a difference having a player like that, and if he can continue to come through, that defense will end up doing very well against an offense that just doesn't have much juice and can't put up many points on the board. The Colts defense is at number 8, and they're taking on the Atlanta Falcons overseas. We have another overseas matchup this week, which typically raises up my defense rankings if you're playing overseas, because what we've seen, offenses don't do particularly well unless you're the Rams. That's the only team that did well overseas offensively. But the reason I don't love the Colts this week is because we saw a couple things this weekend. Number one, the impact of Drake London and Michael Penix in the lineup for Atlanta. Obviously, they're a much higher upside offense. Bijan Robinson can't do it all by himself. So the Falcons are already one of the most hot and cold teams in the NFL, particularly offensively. And number two, I saw the Colts morph into the Daniel Jones version of the Giants like they were freaking werewolves. The Colts defense, they're at a disadvantage if Jonathan Taylor gets shut down and Daniel Jones has to throw the ball a bunch. That's the one thing that's worrying me, but honestly, this is an extraordinary upside play. If you believe that the Falcons will suck this week again, then you go ahead and play them, because the floor on this game is not very high. It's a low floor, high upside game. That's why I've got to mitigate it and risk a little at number 8. The Ravens defense is at number 9, and they're going to Minnesota to take on the Vikings this week. Now, I think with the Ravens defense, we're starting to finally see what I saw in the offseason. And the reason I got off of them for so long was because they were a disgrace. But if you remember last year, that's exactly how things happened. Last year, the beginning of the year, they couldn't get anything right. And then they finally moved Kyle Hamilton around a little bit more, and that's where you saw the best of the Ravens defense. Well, obviously, the Ravens looked good last week. They looked good the week prior against the Bears, and now they're going to Minnesota. Very tough environment to play, but I still don't trust J.J. McCarthy. And that's really where this ultimately lies. If you're getting Kyle Hamilton to do more of what he's inclined to do, which is move around, be in the box some, be up at the line of scrimmage some, you're going to do well as a defense. And I do believe that the Ravens have a lot of momentum behind them. And the Vikings are still searching for their momentum with J.J. McCarthy. So I think this ends up being a solid play. And the Chargers defense is at number 10. They're taking on the Steelers at home. So there's a couple reasons I like the Chargers a lot this week. Number one, the Steelers' record when they go to the West Coast, not good. They travel across the country. They are not a very good team. And offensively, I think it's going to affect them. Number two, I think the Chargers pass rush abuses the Steelers offensive line this week. Jim Harbaugh has done well against bad offensive lines over his career. And I do think that with Khalil Mack back in the fold, it makes a big difference for that defense. The Los Angeles Chargers, not been the greatest defense for fantasy this year, but they do have 26 sacks through 9 games. That's almost 3 sacks a game. That's a good average right there. They have explosion weeks, and I do think that this could be one of those weeks. I don't like the Steelers going to the West Coast, and I definitely think that the Chargers end up winning this game by a lot. So if they get into a hole, like I think they will, Rodgers probably tosses an interception or so as well. I think this has potential to be a decent upside play too. Dropping down to our last tier, the Eagles defense is at 11, and they're going to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Now, this one has a feel of the Falcons offense to me. The Packers offense is so gross sometimes. Against the Browns, against the Panthers last week, they can look atrocious. But they can also come out and look like they did against the Steelers and against other teams that they've played this year. They do really well because they have tons of talent. So this one feels scary to do. But at the same time, the Eagles have made moves on their back end with Jair Alexander and another corner, and they've also made moves to that front seven with Jalen Phillips now coming to help with the pass rush. They're making moves. They're coming off the bye week. I do think they end up winning this game and probably shutting the Packers down to a minimum offensively. Probably not the best play, but I do think it's top 12. And the Rams defense is at 12 to round us out. At the San Francisco 49ers, the only thing that gives me pause here is that historically, Kyle Shanahan has owned Sean McVay in this rivalry. Owned it. It's not even actually been a rivalry. The Rams defense, though, I cannot get past what I'm seeing. It's fantastic football. That front seven is dominant. Jared Verse is having a really dominant season, and that's really been the charge of the defense, being a top 5 play in fantasy so far this year. 27 sacks through 8 games, 8 forced fumbles, 5 interceptions. All of that stems from the front seven, and they made additions to the secondary before the trade deadline as well. So I do think that with the 49ers' weaknesses offensively, and particularly on the offensive line, that's the reason I think they're top 12. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below, and if you want to see the top 12 defense for the fantasy football playoffs, click on this video right here.